Let's get to our very first game that we have lined up for all of you. We've got the Vikings versus the Saints. This is always a trap game. I cannot remember the last time that we beat the Vikings. I'm sure it's more recent than I can remember, but there's so many open wounds still, Spencer. There's still so many things. And now with Josh Dobbs arriving in Minnesota in a contract year for Kirk Cousins, if they end up re-signing him, which I don't see any reason why they wouldn't at this point, this may end up being a problem much longer than I was even suspecting. But if you remember at the end of the last episode when we were talking about Josh Dobbs, I was nervous about him coming into New Orleans, and I had every right to be. He turned out to be just exactly the same. Turns out if he has even more time to go and prepare and to have some time with his teammates, he's doing just as well. Not only that, Spencer, but I want to just make a note here that there are so many people on that roster that are stepping up in the absence of the biggest playmaker, perhaps in the entire National Football League, Justin Jefferson. The main component of that being Jordan Addison. He has just come on in a way that it has been completely unexpected. I think he looks like the most polished rookie coming out of this wide receiver class. And he has certainly been the one that has stepped up the most in the absence of Justin Jefferson on this roster. The other of which that I would point out would be Hawkinson. He has really, really come on in the last few weeks, and he is a very, very excellent safety blanket for Dobbs in these first two starts. I guess he didn't technically start last week. But there are just so many things to like here about what the Vikings are doing. And this is against a very good defense. This is against the Saints defense. We had Marcus May back in the lineup. And something that I noticed is that they were playing a lot of man coverage, which they do a lot just because they have so many great weapons in the secondary that you can just basically man up everybody and try to force them to run the ball. But with such a solid front seven, it's hard to run or pass. They had a very, very long streak of holding quarterbacks to under 275 yards passing. Mm-hmm. I believe that went back about a season and a half, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if Josh Dobbs, still under 275, but damn near. But just an incredible performance, again, by Josh Dobbs. So you have the likes of Marshawn Lattimore, Marcus May, and Paulson Adebo, who's playing the best football that he's played. Just finding ways to win is Josh Dobbs' MO. That is what he does. That's what he's built for. And we were talking a little bit about this, Spencer, but the number one quarterback, number one rushing yards in quarterback in the NFL is Lamar Jackson. And right on his tails is Josh Dobbs. This is a guy that can get it done through the air. He makes good decisions. He takes care of the ball. And he can also get it done on the ground. He's the second most effective rusher at the quarterback position in the entire league. What were your thoughts on this, Spencer? I don't know how much of this one you watched.
Well, I think it's fair to say now, and that would be, absent the dominance of Tank Dell in his rookie season as well, if Stroud wasn't playing so good. So he truly would be the front runner. But yeah, definitely impressed with Addison. A few guys I already talked about last time we mentioned Vikings, but I want to reaffirm, Brandon Powell. His impact is never felt on the stat sheet the way that he plays on the field. Brandon Powell is really, really breaking out to be a legit factor for this offense. A clutch player, scored last week in a clutch scenario. I saw him pick up a couple key first downs and miss one on passes, one of which was a 3rd and 10 conversion that Dobbs threw an absolute laser beam to him on. Brandon Powell, I'm becoming a really big fan of his game. The other guy I'd like to mention, too, this is actually on the defensive side of the ball, is Mr. Ivan Pace. Man, I swear this is like the Pat Spencer on the back for his draft analysis competition game here because, I made some really good calls with this team. I said I really liked Ivan Pace a lot coming out. I thought, frankly, I really undersold it. I thought he'd be much more of a project, might not even really play much this season. I mean, the kid is nearly just flat out starting at linebacker right now, making plays, really secure tackler, has kind of translated that ability to get after the quarterback from the linebacker position. I really love his versatility. Reminds me of like an undersized Leighton Vander Esch, how he plays,
Right.
which is really interesting. By the way, Leighton Vander Esch actually has another neck injury right now of a string of chronic ones. So hopefully he gets better
Does
soon.
not surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they were saying his career may be in question at this point. So
It's very
here's still
unfortunate.
hoping for good things for Leighton. But
Hmm.
yeah, so loved what Ivan Pace was able to put out there. And then the last thing I would say, not phenomenal performance by any means, but Ty Chandler, I believe, is the rookie
Hmm.
here or the undrafted free agent or something along those lines. He comes in, does an okay job. He does score. Kind of a big need considering Madison picked up a concussion in this game. We will see if he can play again, but especially with Cam Akers already lost for the season, if Madison misses a game, and then, if I can try to call my shot one more time, as a guy I mentioned in the breakdown, but I think could play a role here, especially if Madison is forced to miss any kind of amount of time. Um, Ty Chandler had an okay game, but there's a kid that they took in the 7th round, Dwayne McBride, out of, I believe, either UAF or UAB, one of the two. Think kind of a Mike Davis type, really disciplined, physical runner, makes good decisions, got some nice shake to him the way Mike Davis does as well. I think he's a guy that they could maybe call on here to come in and give them some nice rotational snaps alongside Ty Chandler if they're forced to fill that gap a little bit better going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And just in addition to that, I think that one of the absolute leaders in uh, up to this point, Coach of the Year nominations in my book has to be Kevin O'Connell, just because of how this team is continuing to fight through adversity. You had your franchise quarterback go down with an Achilles. You have your best player, perhaps the best player at the position in the entire National Football League, go out, and you're still managing to put a roster together. You have drafted well enough to where you have good enough depth that no matter what happens, the next guy up, they can just come into your scheme and they can win you ball games. And to be able to battle through that kind of adversity takes a hell of a leader. It takes a hell of a coach. And it takes a guy that can dumb every system down or at least utilize players' skill sets to a point where you can integrate their skill sets with your scheme in a way where you're going to continue to win football games no matter who's up. Um, yeah, just really great stuff. I love how they've drafted. I love the depth that they've developed. And I love how Josh Dobbs has been able to come in and just absolutely set the NFL on fire.
Ryan, one thing
Sad.
I'd like to mention as well from this game, I want to get your take on it, knowing the Saints
Yeah.
defense a little better than I. We didn't mention, but we have to mention TJ Hawkinson with a monster of a performance here. That's 11 receptions
Yes.
for 134 and a tut, averaging 12 a catch. I know I'm not sure what quarter they lost Lattimore in this game, but what I will say is, Paulson Adebo has been enjoying a breakout season for himself, looking like
Mm-hmm.
potentially CB1 material if they do have to indeed move on from Marshawn Lattimore. So I can't imagine he was a part of the reason that Hawkinson was able to get so open so consistently throughout the day, which again, it makes me assume or consider, is the linebacking core to blame? Were they doing a good enough job stopping Hawkinson out of the slot? Or is this more of an Alontae Taylor issue with him playing the slot and potentially being matched up on Hawkinson quite a bit?
Yeah, so in my opinion, so historically, this is something that the Saints have been very, very, very bad at defending on defense. They have given up the most yards to receivers or tight ends coming out of the slot for many years now. This is not a new issue. With Paulson Adebo being moved to the outside, uh, certainly I think he could. There was discussions in training camp that he could have played in the slot, but they ended up bumping him outside, and I think his track record is speaking for himself that that's the right place for him to be. But ultimately, what I think that this boils down to is that first of all, TJ Hawkinson is a matchup nightmare. He is such a big frame, and he is super strong, and he's just one of those tight ends that has such a high football IQ. He can run block. He has no problem, pulling and hitting a guy right in the
Really,
mouth. Like,
really
this is a guy.
polished route runner as well.
very polished route runner. He has really, really good hands. He fights through contact. He's just an insanely hard tight end to guard. Ultimately, I think what this boils down to is that there are just a lot of mismatches. Demario Davis cannot do it all. He's great in coverage. He's great in pass rush. He can fill gaps and run downhill and hit you in the faces best as anybody in the league. Um, but ultimately, I don't know if there's enough linebacker depth, or even when we play nickel and we're manning everybody up. If you've just got big body guys, because the Saints defense has never been about size and explosion. It's been, we are going to play sticky. We are going to play in your hip, and you're not going to be able to shake us. But if you get a nice grab, then especially with a guy like a big frame like Hawkinson, there's not a whole lot of guys that are pushing higher than 220 pounds that can really just manhandle you down to the ground, which I think is made up for a lot in the front seven. Those are some big boys that run downhill and can pop you in the mouth, no problem. But the Saints do run a lot of nickel because they do have such talented DBs at this point. But I think it's ultimately just a mismatch when you have a tight end like this, or when you have receivers that are just big body, just built like brick shit houses. Ultimately, there's just not enough size and strength to be able to contain a guy like that for all 4 quarters of a game, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. And I think the thing I finished to kind of knock it off before we move to the clips, I know you're eager to get to those, is that, man, I really think TJ Hawkinson right now, we're witnessing him really come into his own as a top tight end in the NFL. He's always been at the kind of the scratching the surface, the echelon, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it ironic because, Sam Laporta out of Iowa, he slots right into the Detroit offense, into the same role Hawkinson was in, is currently having an incredible rookie season, unprecedented tight end rookie season right now for the Lions. And yet, this change of scenery for Hawkinson has been absolutely phenomenal for his development. He is leaned on
100%.
very heavily. He is a massive part as to why what you said with Jefferson being out. He has officially turned into the number one read for the offense. Jordan Addison succeeding on the outside as well has helped keep the attention off of him. But you can't help but look at what he's been able to do without Jefferson in this offense really indicates to me that he's really up there as far as the tight end rankings goes. If we had to do a rankings video today, he would certainly be in my top 3 potentially.
Oh, I was just going to say he would be top 3 for me as well. And not only that, Spencer, he's an incredibly polished route runner. He can run block. He has great hands, great frame. He fights through contact. And Spencer, he is a tough dude. These last 2 weeks, he has taken some of the hardest hits that were in the entire league in those
I've
weeks.
seen him.
And he can just get absolutely lit up. And he is not a guy he'll take the lick, and then play or two, he's right back in there, and then he's going to gouge you for 30. That's just what he does. That's his game. TJ Hawkinson certainly has blossomed over there in Minnesota, and it's really incredible. It just really goes to show how great that front office in Minnesota is, getting a guy like that. I think he was playing really well even with Kirk, but just imagine, Spencer, how scary this offense is beginning to look when Justin Jefferson gets back, which is not very far. He was already activated off of IR, so it could be within the next week or so that we see Justin Jefferson back in this offense.
Yep.
Yeah. TJ Hawkinson, he certainly, if he had stayed in Detroit with this offense and with Dan Campbell, he certainly would be doing great things, but I think that he's really found himself a really nice home there in Minnesota. And Josh Dobbs clearly leans on him, as inexperienced quarterbacks tend to do, as a safety blanket, as a sort of a release valve for some pressure, even though Dobbs is great at avoiding pressure in his own right. TJ Hawkinson is just a guy that you can consistently and reliably go to. And even if he doesn't catch the ball, he's so big and he's got such a big frame that it's likely going to be to Hawkinson or to no one, which you just really love to see it.
Beautiful. Beautiful stuff.
All right, Spencer, why don't we transition a little bit here, and let's take a look at some of the clips that I pulled for the Saints and Vikings.
Show me the money.
All right, Spencer. The first clip that I pulled for you here is just a really great example of how well this team has been working together. This is a really, really beautiful catch and throw by Jordan Addison, from Josh Dobbs to Jordan Addison, into double coverage off a nice tip. I believe this was their first or second drive of the game. And it's just throws and plays like this that just illustrate my point that the dudes that are stepping up on this team to be able to make plays like this are the reason that they are able to win games. It's just an absolute dot from Josh Dobbs. It's great concentration from Jordan Addison, an incredible job of stepping up. And, clearly here, as Addison motions, this is man coverage.
Is that?
I believe that is Paulson.
Yeah.
I believe that is Paulson Adebo. And even here, I would just like to point out that the ridiculous range of Demario Davis, sort of doubling on the crosser here, but he does manage to somehow, while that ball's in the air, try to make a play on this ball. But it is just an absolute dot from Josh Dobbs, and really great hands and concentration by Jordan Addison. Take a look at it from this angle. We can see Josh Dobbs.
You have to commend Demario too. Watch him cover this under. He's right there step for step, and then, like you said, has the wherewithal to back up as the throw goes over him.
And just great stuff. I mean, great footwork. Head's pointing in the right place. We talked about this before. He has absolute perfect fundamentals. And look at where this ball is placed, man. Like, Jordan Addison is not the tallest guy on the field, but he has a great vertical. He gets up and high points it. And even though Paulson Adebo does get his hand on this ball, he has the concentration to be able to rang that thing in. And just a beautiful, beautiful ball by Josh Dobbs. This is what I mean. This is a team that can just work very, very well together in such a short amount of time. This is the reason why they're winning games. This is a reason why, if they make it into the playoffs, I think they're very likely to upset a team, in my opinion.
Ryan, it's funny. Doesn't this remind you of another play where a Vikings receiver caught an out route on a close covering Saints DB and ran for extra yardage? It was in the same building, if I'm not mistaken. But if you notice here, look at how deep he's playing. That's where you're supposed to be. Ends up making the play there, 32. Thanks for getting him out of bounds. Thank you, 32, for doing your job on that one.
Yeah, pretty short clip, but it's just great. I mean, just the level of play that Josh Dobbs and Jordan Addison are playing with to this point, just really, really phenomenal stuff. This is a team that is in sync. They're working together. They're on the same page. Beautiful, beautiful pass, and really good coverage. Paulson Adebo is stuck on Jordan Addison like rice, and there's just not a whole lot else you could have done better defensively on this play. Demario Davis even makes a hell of a play on this ball.
That's the thing I think it's worth contextualizing, is just understanding just how high a level Paulson Adebo is playing at this season. I mean, truly locked down, arguably one of the best, if not the best, number 2 corner in the NFL so far.
100%. 100%. I mean, even to like just form wise, right? Like, if you notice here, look at how quickly. So like, Jordan Addison is like breaking right here. His hips have turned out this way. He's going to start breaking this way. Paulson Adebo's facing this way, and yet somehow at the end of the play, he is able to undercut this ball at a certain point. So the ball's in the air, and he is somehow able to undercut that route and still get a hand on it. Just a really beautiful play by Paulson Adebo, but even better play from Josh Dobbs and Jordan Addison.
All right, Spencer, we talked up the big ol' hawk from the beginning of this video. Why not just show a really great play from Hawkinson himself?
Please.
Down here in the slot, in the bunch, and it's another phenomenal scramble from Dobbs. I don't know how he gets out of this, and he just finds a really, really great spot in the soft part of that coverage. And then just the absolute grit to be able to push this ball all the way down inside the 5. This is just what sets Hawkinson apart from other tight ends at this point. This puts him, to me, in the upper echelon, like we were discussing, of like the top 3 tight ends in the NFL. Just as a way to extend plays and to find open spaces and have the power with the frame to be able to just drive that ball down the field. is just incredible. There's 1, 2, 3, and this is what I mean, Spencer, with the size issue, is that there were 4 DBs that it took to get him down on the ground after that. It's really not that complicated of a route either. I mean, ultimately what he does is he's just kind of manned up and runs a little bit of a hitch. But as Dobbs sort of, kind of comes in here and rolls out this way, all of the coverage is kind of just starting to follow him this way. Because I have to imagine that was something in the film room that they discussed was, do not let Josh Dobbs just scramble all over the place on us. No matter what, let's just either have a spy on him or let's just make sure that we know where he is at all times. And with that, this is the chemistry that I'm talking about, is when Dobbs goes to scramble, just watch how Hawkinson finds the soft spot in this coverage. So right here, he's not open. He's not even close to open. But as soon as Dobbs gets out of the pocket, he is this DB, I believe it's also Paulson Adebo, is kind of forced to bite down on this. This has got to be something that Dennis Allen has talked about, is that when he gets out of the pocket, make sure that we're containing. And Hawkinson here has the football IQ that, man, look at this. All this green, wide open grass. I'm just going to sit my ass right here and wait for this ball. Makes a great catch, and then just a phenomenal effort. Got the legs churning, and got the big boys coming in to help. And that's a ball down inside the 5. It's just incredibly hard to stop.
Yeah, and I saw this play when I was doing the recap myself, preparing for the episode, and the thing that stood out to me is, look at the extra effort from the offensive lineman getting upfield. Dalton Reisner specifically just puts a hand in the back of Hawkinson before he goes down, and they shove him forward for extra yardage. Look at that hustle from Reisner to get upfield and shove the pile forward. That's giving me a little more of an insight, Ryan, into why they felt comfortable letting Ezra Cleveland go. They have gotten some really great contributions out of Dalton Reisner. He was one of those lauded leaders, those, borderline captain level guys for Denver once upon a time, prior to the all of the bad things that resulted in him leaving. But great play from the offensive line here too, to give Dobbs time enough to find the hole for him to scramble out of. Like, watch the tackles here. Darisaw on the edge. Gives Dobbs a pretty good amount of time with, I think that may be Granderson, who we just talked about.
It is, yep, in here in the 9 tech.
I mean, that's a great matchup in of itself. Look at him and Darisaw battle on this snap. I mean, Darisaw does give Dobbs a good 2.5 seconds here, maybe more, honestly, maybe more like 3 seconds or so, but I mean, handles him pretty well. He finally does get free, which causes Dobbs to roll. But if you look at the right side of the line as well during this, Ryan, I mean, they do an excellent job escorting the other rusher outside of the play. That's Cameron Jordan, which is no easy block for Brian O'Neill there. Escorts Cameron Jordan out of the play, and then the guard comes back to help him out, keeps him in the backfield, and allows Dobbs that extra space to roll out and find his target.
100%. Yeah, it's just really phenomenal stuff against a pass rush that is no slouch, extending the play, finding the open spot, and then just playing gritty smash mouth football and getting that ball down inside the 5. It's a really, really great play, great stuff. High football IQ from everybody across the board here, and this was just kind of the MO of the entire game. It was just Addison and Hawkinson were just straight up unguardable. We couldn't man them up. We couldn't zone them up. We couldn't do all of that while containing Josh Dobbs. This team has just got 101 different ways that they can beat you. And for Josh Dobbs' second game facing a very tough opponent, in my opinion, with the New Orleans Saints defense, just really came out and put on a show, and is quickly becoming not only just a Band-Aid solution in Minnesota, but he could just outright become the starter in the offseason if we see Kirk end up no longer being a Minnesota Viking. Just a really fun play, and this was the MO the entire game.